18.
This is True Love with another One Piece discussion video. So in the recent One Piece chapter 937, we discovered the Kakuto swords, or the famous black blades, are not actually created black, but after time they eventually become black. It's been theorized that infusing the blade with armament Haki over and over again and fighting many battles with it will eventually turn the blade black permanently, creating a Kakuto blade. I've got a different perspective. Let me tell you why. So far, we've only seen two actually confirmed Kakuto blades. Yoru, which belongs to Mihawk, the greatest swordsman in the world currently, and Shusui, belonging to Ryuma, the legendary samurai of Wano. Well, it used to belong to Ryuma. Both of these blades fit the somewhat vague description we get from Gyukimaru in chapter 937 of the origin of Kakuto blades. They are or were wielded by powerful Haki users who were in many battles with the same blade. Despite this, I think we may have all gotten off in the wrong direction when we all accepted that using armament Haki is the way to make a blade turn Kakuto. I think we started in the wrong place. So I reread chapter 937 in the official Shonen Jump app with the official translation in it. Gyukimaru says, Shusui is a black blade. It was forged through Ryuma's history of battle. Forge means to make or shape a metal object by heating it in a fire or furnace and hammering it. It sounds similar to a battle between Haki-infused blades, hey? More importantly, in this context, is that forge can also mean to create something strong, something enduring, and something successful, like a friendship, like a relationship. This is important because I believe that this relationship between the sword master and the actual sword is a bridge towards the creation of forging a Kakuto blade. So I actually also reread one of these scanlations, and in that Gyukimaru literally says, Shusui is a black blade. It became one after many battles alongside Ryuma. So it's not a big difference, but it does agree that this sword and its master had a relationship, went through many violent hardships together, and eventually the sword turned black, perhaps permanently imbued with Haki. Now, the issue I have with this is pretty simple, to be honest. If the only thing that's needed to create a Kakuto blade is armament Haki and to be in many fights or repetition, then why aren't there way more black blades? We see fodder level Marines using Haki. You can assume that they battle a fair bit, they're in the Navy. But we even have canon proof of people able to hang with black blade users, like Mihawk. Guys like Vista, who he sailed as a Yonko commander under Whitebeard for years and years. Mihawk, even when they were fighting in Marineford, he actually acknowledged his strength in a little quick duel that they had. In that battle, Vista even deflects one of Mihawk's long-range slashes. These at least have been seen going through, smashing straight through battleships. Or even, what about Shanks? He's one of the strongest pirates in the whole world. He's a rival in sword battle, in duels to Mihawk. It's a man who could block an overhand, two-handed attack from Whitebeard. Shanks can block it with one hand. Why don't these guys have black blades? It's not a time thing, because even these two guys are around the same age as Mihawk. You think they'd be active in battle around around the same time as Mihawk. If time was a bigger factor, then why haven't we even seen Rayleigh? What about him? We've seen him using a sword against Kizaru. Why doesn't he have a black blade? There's an argument to be made that in regards to legendary swords, legendary black blades, if everybody has a legendary sword, then no one does. However, there are just far too many great swordsmen currently in the world, even currently alive, for there to be so few Kakuto blades. I think as well that the fact that Zoro was so surprised, he was visually, they had a panel just of his reaction. It showed how surprised he was when he found out how Kakuto blades are made. I think that's a clue as well in itself. It's not something simple. It's not something intuitive that Zoro can feel. Otherwise, we can fairly assume that Zoro, someone who has dedicated his life to swords and sword fighting, it's literally his entire life is sword fighting. And he's also, at this point, he's quite advanced in Haki. It's safe to assume that he would have felt something by now. He would have unlocked something more, like we saw him do in Alabasta. Therefore, I think the contrast between how often we see armament Haki and how rarely we see black blades means that there must be more to it than something simple like base armament Haki and repetition. So here's where we get into the theory. I believe that the way to forge a black blade is with a combination of imbuing your blade with Conqueror's Haki to dominate the will of the blade. When you dominate your blade, it will relinquish itself to you and to your will and permanently accept your will and carry it via black Haki. Let me try and break that down bit by bit with evidence from the story. Our current understanding of Conqueror's Haki is when one exceedingly strong-willed person exerts their will over another person, overwhelming them, often to a point of unconsciousness, frothing at the mouth and blank eyes. Now, we're getting to new levels, new forms, and new branches of the Haki tree, and I think a few people are already on to the possibility of imbuing weapons and attacks with Conqueror's Haki. We've had a few examples already post time skip. The first, I believe, was when Luffy fought Don Chinjiao in the Colosseum. Another time, there's a very popular screen grab when Luffy saves Law from Doflamingo. He's doing like a stomp to kill Doflamingo. What we discovered when Luffy and Don Chinjiao's attacks clashed was black lightning. This is Luffy and Doflamingo both trying to exert their will over each other in an intense life and death situation. They're both attempting to dominate the will of their opponent via brute strength and willpower. Another little bit of evidence or another clue as to someone imbuing an attack with Conqueror's Haki as opposed to an AoE kind of blast that we initially saw when we discovered Conqueror's Haki was when Kaido one-shots Luffy in Wano. We see Kaido attack Luffy, the same black lightning explodes out from Kaido's mace from his club, and Luffy is now dead. He hits him in Gear 4th, he immediately gets blown around. He doesn't have foam at the mouth, if I recall correctly, but he's completely one-shotted, his eyes are gone. This is the same visual cue that we get from fodder after they get blasted by Conqueror's Haki. Hopefully that will prove to you that we know Conqueror's Haki can be used to strengthen your attacks. But what does that have to do with Black Blades? Finding it back a little bit from around Rogue Town or Logue Town, whatever you call it, we were introduced to swords having a will of their own. So when Zoro goes into the sword shop to buy two new blades, we get the epic scene of him tossing up the Sandai, I think it's a Sandai Kitetsu, into the air and daring it to cut his arm off. This is after he learns of its cursed nature. Zoro goes so far as to declare the sword as bewitched before anyone even tells him of its nature. So he's picked it up. It goes back to what I said about being intuitive with Haki. He picks this up before anyone tells him anything. The shopkeeper even says if he knows or if someone told him something around that. This is our first clue of swords having objects and swords having a will of their own. If you read the chapter again, you can see that the force just from him throwing it up in the air makes the blade plunge into the wooden floor almost up to the hilt. So this was Oda showing us the threat of dismemberment is actually very real in this scene. The shopkeep says a sword chooses its wielder. This statement is the second clue. A sword chooses its wielder. Tashigi in this same chapter speaks of evil men being the best swordsman and how it's unfortunate how it works out that way. She said that the swords are crying. Tashigi is immediately introduced as a sword geek. She's got a little book and she recognizes all these swords on sight. It's not crazy to speculate that she knows a thing or two about the deep lore in swords. And that is the third clue in this one specific scene in this one chapter as well. Just quickly, so that we know it's not even just swords, to prove my point that objects, not only swords and weapons, have a will of their own. We've also seen a bazooka that ate the Inu Inu no Mi in Alabasta, and we've seen a sword that ate the Zoro Zoro no Mi in Eni's lobby. This further suggests that objects can have a will of their own. Now that we've proven that objects can have a will, we have the connection between Conqueror's Haki and the will of powerful blades. In the specific example I just gave, the sword's will was also described as its evil nature. It was described as a curse as well. Zoro challenged it immediately and was accepted by it. Zoro now has a relationship with this sword. When he imbues it with Conqueror's Haki, there's a struggle. He even says, when he first starts using it in battle, he says, this is really hard to control. This wants to cut everything. He has to make it cut what he wants and not cut what he doesn't want to cut. When it finally relents and completely accepts him and allows itself to be dominated by its will, what do you think will happen? Now, jumping back to the scarcity of Black Blade. Because there are not nearly as many people that can use Conqueror's Haki as there are that can use Armament Haki, the sheer willpower to dominate the will of a cursed sword, a sword that will literally kill you if you're not strong-willed enough to tame it, if you're not strong enough even physically to tame it. I think that the reason that Shanks and Rayleigh don't have Black Blades is because they don't walk the path of the sword master. They're not Ryuma, a samurai who's been raised since most likely since almost birth to live the way of the samurai, live by the sword, die by the sword. It's not Mihawk, who we don't know enough about Mihawk's past, but from what we do know of him presently, he's devoted to his sword and to training and being the strongest swordsman alive. Shanks and Rayleigh, they don't have the same relationship as someone like Zoro, Mihawk, Ryuma, like they have or had with theirs. Maybe even the sword having a curse or a will of its own is integral to its potential to become a Black Blade. The beginnings of when you're actually taming one of these swords is telling it when to cut and when not to cut. In chapter 5, Koshiro Sensei shows how he can make his sword slash at paper and leave it intact. In Alabasta, in I believe chapter 195, we get our first glimpse of Haki as Zoro exerts his will and makes his sword slice steel through Mr. One. It's not too much to speculate that further domination of the blade's will via Conqueror's Haki will lead to unlocking the next level of Haki being literally fused within this object. So, in conclusion, Conqueror's Haki is where you completely dominate the opponent's will. We have proven that objects like swords can specifically, in the world of One Piece, have a will. You can use your Conqueror's Haki to dominate the will of said sword. The only question left is which sword of Zoro's is he going to turn into a Kakuto? Or will it be two of them? So I know this was a lot of information packed into a somewhat small video. Please let me know, do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Why? Do me a favor, leave a like and subscribe down below. My name is TrueLove and I'll see you later. Bye bye.